R.I.PRESENTS.
Sea people, mountain people. Erosion. Chapter 1. Story 1. Approximately 5. A port town in Hokkaido. The city was surrounded by the sea on 3 sides and was a prosperous city in the steel industry. This town did not focus on sightseeing, so it was a town where scenic nature remained. Many people think that Hokkaido has a long winter and a short summer, but the 4 seasons of Hokkaido are visited almost evenly, and this port city in particular was a city that greatly benefited from the 4 seasons. However, even if it is blessed with nature, it is a different problem from the prosperity of the town. With the decline of the steel industry, the town gradually declined, and the young people left the local area. As the population declined, the number of closed shutters increased. The lights in the downtown area also gradually went out. Despite feeling the shadow of such decline, people were leading their daily lives in a normal way. In a corner of the city, the man stood on a cliff overlooking the sea in the square where the shrine once stood, which had been his playground since he was a child, and vaguely watched the scene unfold ahead. The man's name is Ryoji Sakai, 19 years old. His occupation is part-time job in a karaoke pub. He was a sociable person, but he was busy every day, and he filled the gap in his heart by mischievously spending time with his playmates with such incomprehensible anxiety about what he wanted to do and what he was suitable for. He's a very common man. On holidays, he liked to drive a motorcycle, head to the mountain TV tower, park his motorcycle in a park called Oniyama, and look out at the sea from the top of the cliff beyond. The blue of the sea changes every day, and on days with high transparency, you can see seaweed swaying on the seabed and, if you're lucky, an animal named Todo swimming in the sea. White waves on windy days, ships come and go, mountains on the far opposite shore. He was immersed in a sense of openness by looking at such a vivid scenery. Such a quiet daily life changed when the short summer was coming to an end. It started when he started having strange dreams one night with about 4 months left until he was 20. The dream changes day by day. At first, he just single-mindedly advanced through the dense plants. Next, he arrives at the bank of the river from there, and when he looks up at the upstream, he wakes up. The short dream lasted several days. The next dream was in the dark, but strangely he could see his hands. With his left hand on the wall, he was slowly moving forward. Even in the dark, where he couldn't see anything, strangely he wasn't afraid. He went slowly, step by step, as if guided by something. The next moment, he woke up startled by the sensation of slipping. The dreams afar, potential anxiety and stress appear as abstract images in the dream. This is a common story. At first, he didn't care about this dream as a strange dream. However, the next dream that appears is different from the past, with realistic movements, depictions of moments as if looking at a photograph, and sometimes a slightly longer image appears as if all the dreams are stitched together. And at the end, he always wakes up at the same moment. The door, and the dazzling light that shines in the moment he opens it. Such a dream was repeated every night, and the head was gradually confused. I had a weird dream. When he tells his shopmates about his dreams, they all give simple answers. No one listened to him because it was a dream, and he felt a sense of distance from his peers, and his smile gradually disappeared and his words became fewer. He stopped playing with his friends, did not go to his favorite mountains, and gradually spent more time alone in his room. His daily pattern is a monotonous repetition of a round trip between the room and the store. He watched TV from his TV-loving habit, but many were quiz shows. He gets tired of thinking and changes channels, only to be disappointed because the next show was a travel show. The previous TV shows were interesting, was staring at the screen dimly while he thought about such a thing. At the base of the Buso Peninsula, far from Hokkaido, is a central city in Chiba Prefecture with a longing for Tokyo. In the corner, there was a townscape that smelled a little Showa, and there was a girl who recognized herself as a history lover's girl in that house. Her name is Toka Hoshizuki. She is an 18-year-old who boasts beautiful long black hair, a clear face with slightly larger eyes, and a cute smile. She loved chatting with her friends, and there was always a smile around her. However, when her love of history came out, the surroundings were a little troubled. She didn't notice the shortcomings, and the friends around her looked at each other, and everyone looked at the signal that the usual things had begun, and exchanged signals. Tuka's love of history is a little biased, and it is more ancient history than modern history. She is particularly interested in the world of Kojiki and Nihon Honshoki, and makes statements such as Kojiki is a bit erotic, isn't it? She was a girl with a slightly erotic side. Toka is a first-year student attending a university in Tokyo. She also liked to talk to her new friends, but in fact there was an action she kept secret of her friends. It is a tour of used bookstores. Using the internet of her mobile phone, she searched second-hand bookstores and visited them to find out if there were any things related to ancient history. That time was a blissful time for her, but she thought that her maniac up to this point would surprise those around her, so when she went around used bookstores, she told her friends, "I have an errand," and acted in secret from anyone. Toka's main concern right now is the myth of the transfer of the country a long time ago and the relationship with Izumo Taisha. Is this a fight between the same peoples, or is it a simple case of winning or losing? At the root of this difficult question was a newspaper article she read in the library that she attended when she was in junior high school. The article itself was described small in a corner, and little was known to the public. The content of the article was that a settlement was reached in a court case between the government and the Ainu people, and the government recognized the Ainu as the indigenous people of the Japan. Toka, who lives in Chiba Prefecture, had little knowledge of the Ainu people, and could not understand the meaning of the settlement of the trial, so she said, "he," and recognized it lightly, but it remained in the corner of her memory. Toka's history lover start is a very common beginning. Where is Yamataikoku? Where's Atlantis? From there, her interest shifted to Ryoma Sakamoto, Nobunaga Oda, and castles and castle ruins in many places, and from there, as she read the Kojiki, she turned to the world of ancient historical romance. It is March 11th that the daily life of two people far away has changed greatly. In the wake of the Great East Japan earthquake, the fates were greatly shaken, and they faced the darkness of history and the fate. On that day, Ryoji was driving to Tomakomai with a purpose. While listening to his favorite music, he ran a car and came to Koju Beach. Toka, on the other hand, was in a used bookstore in Uriyasu that she had found a few days before. She used her lecture holidays to explore the store in a pleasant mood. Then, it started started with small tremors, but gradually the shaking grew to the point where it became impossible to stand. And even when Ryoji was driving, it was big enough to feel the shaking. Ryoji sensed something unusual, so he parked his car on the side of the road and waited for the shaking of the earthquake to subside. Japan has many earthquakes, and earthquakes are not uncommon, but he felt that the shaking on the day was longer and slower than the earthquakes he had experienced so far, and he unexpectedly switched the audio of the car to the radio and listened to see if any information was being broadcast. When he first started listening, it was a normal broadcast, but suddenly it changed to an emergency bulletin, and the scale of the earthquake, tsunami warning information was broadcast, and the location of the epicenter was also informed. What surprised him was that the epicenter was off Sanriku, and despite being far away, it shook heavily, and a tsunami warning was issued along the Pacific coast, and the announcer called for evacuation. Ryoji, who was driving along the coast, saw the direction of the sea for a moment and ran his car to move to a higher place. Just before the earthquake, Toko was strolling with her eyes shining in the store. When she started exploring books hard, the moment began with a small sound. It started with a small shake, and soon it became so big that she couldn't stand, and she crouched down involuntarily, but when she saw the book started falling off the shelf, she felt intuition that it was dangerous, crawled on all fours and walked toward the entrance of the store. All the while, one book after another fell and hit Tuka's body, but even if she felt pain, the alarm that was ringing in her head instinctively made her body head towards the entrance. When she reached near the entrance, it was still shaking small, and when she turned her eyes outward, it turned into a surprising sight. The road was cracked, water was gushing out of it, and something protruded in the middle of the road. It was a manhole. Yoriyasu was a land with weak ground that was built along the coast, and a liquid phenomenon occurred in many areas. The road had almost lost its function. Toka, who was still in the store, will soon know the devastation around her. On the other hand, Ryoji stopped the car in a high place a little away from the coast, and stared at the coast from there. He got out of the car, put his hand on the guardrail, stared at the shore for a while, and saw a white line in the distance. line slowly approached the shore, and a new line appeared just behind it. When the line changed to a white line as it approached land, it finally recognized that this was a tsunami. The moment the first wave of the tsunami hit the breakwater, the splash rose and climbed over the breakwater. However, the waves weakened by the breakwaters did not get over the embankment of the coast, so it was determined that it was not having to escape. The next moment, the second wave reached. At that moment, the waves came together, easily over the embankment, and flowed into the residential area. Seawater flowed slowly through the residential area, and the seawater stopped in front of the National Highway. Residents of residential areas stood on the National Highway, and some people who ran to further heights, and several cars that did not know the information of the tsunami passed next to it. YOG had been stunned on the spot for a while, but suddenly became worried about the local area. There was still no sign of the tsunami subsiding, but when he confirmed that the tsunami had not reached the National Highway, he hurriedly jumped into the car and turned back on the road that came. While driving, he looked around while paying attention to the seaside, but he was interested that the damage was not seen, and that the house in the snow country was strong. In this situation, my hometown might have minimized the damage. He told myself so and hurried home. Toka went out of the used bookstore when the shaking subsided, and stood stunned on the spot. The road of the asphalt, which had been beautifully grounded a little while ago, became uneven. The manhole jumped out here and there, and people who stared at the spectacle as stunned as Toka stood around. Toka began to walk unconsciously, stunned, looking over the surrounding buildings with an empty head. The walls of the house were cracked, and some houses were tilted, and the effects of the shaking were felt. Confused, she walked forward slowly, instinctively heading for her home, her feet heading for the nearest station. Due to liquefaction, the road was cracked everywhere and water and sand were gushing out, making the road to the station difficult. Then, when she continued walking and finally saw her destination, there were many people surrounding the entrance of the station, and as she was inquiring about the situation from a little distance, she heard the station staff explaining something to the people around her and saying, "The train has stopped." And it was seen that a lot of people were groping for the means of transportation. At That's right, too. It muttered so and looked down. But the next moment, she remembered something, took her cell phone out of her pocket, and immediately called home. But no matter how many times she calls home, the number you dialed is turned off or difficult to connect. With this succession of voices, there was no sign of being able to talk at all, and when her looked around, it looked similar. Toka, who is a little addicted to mobile phones, couldn't judge anything and sat there clutching her phone. She sat there for a while, when suddenly her cell phone vibrated and she was about to drop it in surprise. Still, when she looked at the screen, it was an incoming email. She wondered about the incoming email and saw its contents, but it was a game invitation. Why at such a time? A little angry, the next moment she remembered. The game site is alive. There's a message board. She immediately looked at the game site on her phone and it opened easily, so she hurriedly looked at the message board. No one had written on the message board yet, but feeling connected to someone made her smile lightly, a little relieved. Immediately, she decided to write a request for information to all of her friends on the site and wait for a reply. After waiting for a while, information was gradually received, such as that the epicenter was off the coast of Tohoku, that a tsunami warning had been issued, and that evacuation had already begun. However, what surprised her the most was that some of her friends who reported the earthquake were people living in Aichi and Wakayama prefectures, and the earthquake were transmitted to places far from Tohoku. When Toka is gathering information on her mobile phone, could hear voices talking around her, there is a tsunami warning, and the Pacific coast is dangerous, Tohoku is the epicenter, so it's okay here, isn't it? Toka got scared, looked around once, and then climbed the stairs to the second floor of the station. There were many people there, some standing stunned, some sitting down looking at the screen of the cell phones, and looking uniformly confused. Toka also sat down in such a corner of the crowd, and looked around dimly. When Ryoji arrived at home, the surroundings were calm, and on the way to his home, even looking around, there was no change, and he rushed to his room first. There was no change in the room, and he turned on the TV to see if there was any earthquake information. The first to jump into his eyes was a flashing tsunami warning at the bottom of the screen. When he hurriedly switched the channel to NHK, the announcer was calling for evacuation continuously, and the screen showed a wave that hit a key somewhere and jumped to a considerable height. Next, a video of a tsunami pouring into a port town. A tsunami on a larger scale than the tsunami he had seen earlier had struck Tohoku. However, through the screen, he could not feel the reality by all means. He was looking into the screen as if he were watching a movie. As time passed, new footage began to emerge one after another, and the images were horrific. A black turbid current engulfs cars, houses, and people, and the screams of people and shouts, "Run away!" reverberates, and it looks like a picture of hell. He was distressed by this terrible scene, and he turned his face down and closed his eyes. It's been about an hour since Toka sat down on the second floor of the station. Then, what the hell is this? A man gave a voice. Looking in the direction of his voice, a man opened his laptop and looked surprised. The person who was around the man looked into the man's personal computer, and uniformly gave a voice of surprise. The people around him were surprised to see the computer, so a circle of interested people formed around the man, and Toka, who was hungry for information, tried to enter the circle. When she finally got to the point where she could see the PC screen, it was an astonishing broadcast. The first thing she saw was a video of everything being swallowed up by the tsunami and flowing as a black wave. In the next video, a tsunami swept into an airport somewhere, and vehicles were swept away. Seeing such a scene, she felt a cold thing run down her spine, and the next moment her mother's face came to her eyes and she couldn't stay where she was stood. She acted quickly. She was away from the crowd, ran out of the building, and ran toward her home. She couldn't think of myself. She wanted to make sure her mother was safe, and she didn't think about anything else. At first, she ran without thinking, but as she walked tiredly, she regained her composure and wondered what a reckless thing she was doing. Thinking that if a tsunami hit here, it would be the end, she smiled wryly. Moreover, when she looked closely at the surroundings on the wide road, she saw the cars were running normally. When she spotted the bus in the motorcade, she remembered the replacement bus she would use when the train stopped. She paused and headed for the nearest bus stop. There was already a long line there, so she gave up and lined up at the back of the line. And as she waited, she reflected a little on herself for acting without thinking about the danger. Toka boarded the bus about 30 minutes later, and after an hour or so, she arrived safely in front of her home. The scene around her from inside the bus looked peaceful, but she heard a number of ambulance sirens, and she felt that there were many injured people. She had been seeing Yuriasu's condition, so she was more worried about her family than anything else. When she arrived at the house, she was hesitant to enter the house because of her anxiety and could not enter. Feeling nervous, Toka took a light breath in front of the entrance, unlocked it, and slowly opened the front door. "I am back," she spoke out into the room. Then, the footstep was heard from the inside, and Mother came. Her mother held Tuka's shoulder. "Yes. I'm glad you're safe." Her mother greeted her with a crying smile. When she entered the house, the cupboard collapsed, the broken tableware was scattered on the floor, and there was no place to step on her feet. Other than that, however, the damage seemed minimal for the magnitude of the shaking, and she didn't have much trouble getting back to her daily life by simply putting the shelves back in place and cleaning the broken dishes. After cleaning up, Toka was tired and sleeping on the sofa when her mother went to the fridge and, "Would you like anything?" Her mother asked her questions. In response to her mother's voice, Toka looked at her mother, and her mother opened the refrigerator door and immediately said, "What?" And then in a slightly surprised voice, "The lights are off." When Toka heard her mother's voice, she immediately stood up and turned on the light in the room. Sure enough, the fluorescent light didn't turn on, and it was only then that I realized that there was a power outage. "It's the effect of the earthquake," Toka muttered and suddenly noticed a certain thing. "It's going to be dark soon." She asked her mother, "Do you have candles?" And her mother replied, "I don't have any candles at home." Upon hearing the reply, Toka told her mother, "I'm going to buy candles," and she headed to the nearest convenience store. When she arrived at the convenience store, there was also a power outage, and the store was in a miserable state with products scattered. Toka saw the clerk who was cleaning up hard, and thought that it was not a situation where she could ask questions very much, but there was no other place to ask, so she decided to listen only to it. "And do you have candles?" She asks the clerk, but the female clerk seems to be busy. Sorry. There is no. She gave her a short reply. In the tone of her voice, Toka, sensing her annoyance, "Oh, was that so? Thank you." She thanked her and quickly left the store. However, Toka, who left the store but did not know the candle shop, was puzzled for a moment and looked back at the clerk, but shook her head lightly and headed to her home. "Let's go back home and ask my mother." When she returned home, she immediately asked her mother where the candle shop was, and she replied that it was sold at a home improvement store or a newly opened drugstore, so she headed for the front door, thinking that it was a little far away. When she was wearing shoes at the front door, woo, she heard an electric sound from behind. This is. She took off her shoes in a hurry. She hurried back to her room and quickly turned on the electricity. Then the light came on this time. "It's good." Toka was relieved in two senses, and sank her tired body into the sofa. The power outage at that time was temporary, but no one expected at the time that the Kanto region would develop into a more troublesome rolling blackout due to the effects of the accident. It is a nuclear accident. Because of the tsunami, the reactor lost all power and the cooling water could not circulate, so the steam that had been heated and evaporated filled the building, and finally caused a steam explosion and blew away the building. For Japan, which had been increasing its dependence on nuclear power for electricity, the impact of this accident was enormous, and although the rolling blackout was resolved in about a month, the public's perception has changed significantly. Distrust of the government and nuclear power plants spread throughout the country, forcing all nuclear power plants to shut down. On the other hand, even on the Pacific coast of Hokkaido, there was damage caused by the tsunami, but the damage to people was minimal, so it did not take much time from the disaster, and many people regained their daily lives. Ryoji also returned to the part-time job the day after he got home, and spent every day as if nothing had happened. However, after work, the telecasts he watched after returning to his room were often broadcast about the tsunami. It is damage information of Tohoku region which increases day by day. He was horrified when he saw the images of the tsunami, but the images of roads cracked by the earthquake, muddy water gushing out of them, and the rapidly increasing number of people affected made him feel like a movie. And still, the tragic tsunami footage made his heart ache, and he sometimes changed channel along the way. He turned a blind eye to the harrowing image. However, he wanted information, and although he consciously watched TV, the explosion of the Fukushima nuclear power plant did not feel real, and he felt like he was watching a scene from a movie somewhere. Even at his part-time job, the topic was nuclear power plants and tsunamis, and even while conversing with them, he could not sort out his feelings, and in his heart, he participated in the conversation with a feeling of taking a step back. One day, he realized that he hadn't had a strange dream lately, thinking that it was because his attention had shifted elsewhere and he stopped thinking about the dream, and since then he has forgotten about it and has been able to sleep well. After that, the concern for the earthquake and the nuclear power plant faded sometime by the repetition of a previous ordinary daily life, too. As the store went into recession and the waiting time at the store increased, his number of days to work began to decrease. In such a free time, everyone thinks about various things. Like many people, he began to think about various things, and he began to think about tsunamis. Then he became interested in what he had seen during the disaster. With the store in recession and more free time, he decided to take a few days off work to see the disaster site. At night, he asked the manager if he could take a vacation, and he agreed to it. The next week, early in the morning, he simply thought he would just go around the disaster site, so he drove off without any preparation. His first destination was Koju Beach, where he had previously witnessed the damage caused by the tsunami. It arrived there in less than an hour. However, it was peaceful here as if the tsunami had not come, so he stopped the car and was stunned for a while. He was amazed to learn that when recovering from a disaster, people exert tremendous power. He made a short stay at Koju Beach and drove along the coast to see what was going on. However, there was no trace of the tsunami everywhere he looked, and even if he drove for a while, he could not find any trace and arrived at Tomakomai port. There was no damage here, so he stopped the car and looked around. There was a man who seemed to be working at the port, so he asked the man about the day. "Oh, the tsunami has come. The tsunami over the quay, but there was no problem just because the tools were washed away a little. Harkodate seems to have been worse than here." The man that Ryoji called out answered with a voice of the white breath where the cold remained. "Yes, thank you." When Ryoji answered so, he returned to the car puzzled by man's unexpected reply, and looked at the harbor dimly. "It's not that far away, but what's the difference from other places?" He thought of a simple question and set fire to the cigarette. "Harkodate," he muttered, holding a cigarette for a while, vaguely thinking. When he looked at the sea for a while, he suddenly came up with the idea of going to Kushiro, which he had casually interested in before. "The time is still before noon, so I should be able to go to Kushiro before it gets dark." So he immediately thought of the route. There are two routes. Hokkaido is divided into east and south by the Hidaka Mountains. In order to head towards Duto, there is a route from the Duo Expressway via the Duto Expressway and a route by the sea that takes I through Cape Eremo. Neither route is complicated, but the route that is likely to be reached without hesitation is via the Duo Expressway. However, if I use high speed, it will cost money. For Ryoji, who lives in part-time job, the high-speed fee hurts. The choice was one choice. He convinced himself that the scenery by the sea was good and he could drive without boredom, and drove to Kushiro. Relying on road signs, he headed toward Cape Eremo, and an idyllic landscape of the Pacific Ocean appeared on his right, and fields and ranches appeared on his left. As he drove along the road to higher ground, he had a wide view of the Pacific Ocean. Its horizon is an eye-opening grandeur. It was different from the spectacle which I always saw, but he realized that he liked the sea after all. After driving for a while, a sign indicating the direction to Cape Eremo appeared, and when the parking lot was seen on the right side, he went inside without hesitation and parked the car. Let's take a look a little bit. As he walked towards the cape, he excused himself that he had come so far and that he should see the scenery. Before he went to the tip of the cape, he turned to the right and looked at the cliff from there, which was a very nice sight, similar to the local sea. and the sight he saw from the tip of the cape was even more majestic than the view he had seen from the inside of the car earlier, and he was fascinated. On the surface of the sea, there are many traces of ships passing through, white clouds, blue of the sky and sea, blending together. Everything is perfectly arranged. He had the urge to go to the tip of the cape and see the key up close, but he has to get to Kushiro before it gets dark, so he doesn't have much time. He wanted to see the scenery a little more after enjoying the scenery for a few minutes, but he reluctantly returned to the car, left the parking lot, saw the sign indicating the Kushiro area, and turned the steering wheel toward Kushiro. When he arrived in Kushiro, it was already dark, so he hurried to find a place to stay. Searching around Kushiro City, he found a slightly older inn. The signboard said that it was 4,500 yen per night without meals. He thought it would be better to stay cheaper, so he parked the car and asked the receptionist if there was a room and if there was a parking lot. Then, there was a reply that both were okay, and he was relieved. When he parked his car in the parking lot and was guided to his room by what seemed to be the female host of the inn, Ryoji, who had not eaten anything since morning, asked the female host where the nearest convenience store was. The female host told him that there was a convenience store along the National Highway which was about a 5-minute walk away, so he immediately walked to buy food. At the convenience store, he chose his favorite fried lunchbox and oolong tea for dinner, bought pastry bread and coffee for breakfast, and went back to his room. Come to think of it, there were a number of food shops on the way here, but I forgot to be hungry and drove, he said as he opened his lunch. Yes, I'm going to go into the room. After the female host said so, she opened her fusuma and entered the room with a blue bucket in her hand. The female host said, "An acquaintance of mine brought it to me. Eat this," she said and handed him a bucket. When he received the bucket, the inside was a mountain of Hanasaki crabs. Even though he was surprised at the sudden thing, "Thank you." When he thanked her, female host said, Good, and left the room and went back. When he was surprised and stared at the bucket for a while, memories of his childhood suddenly came to mind. It happened when I was in the 4th or 5th grade of elementary school. unusual to see a fisherman putting the caught fish into a box, so I went nearby to observe it. And then, "Brother, do you want fish? Take this." When the fisherman called out and pointed, there was a large amount of kajika in the wooden box. "Yeah," I answered so and tried to bring it home. But the fisherman who was watching the scene, not the weight lifted by the power of the child, pull it. The fisherman's uncle laughed and called out, "I thought I could carry it that way," so I replied, "Yep," and slowly dragged it with both hands. The weight of the box was painful for a child's hand, and on the uphill climb on the way, it was so painful that it brought tears to my eyes. Still, when I pulled the box with all my might and brought the fish home, my family was very surprised. When I told my family about the situation, they welcomed me and my grandmother immediately cooking a fish dish to add to dinner. Remembering such an event, I started eating crabs while feeling happy about the luxury unique to Hokkaido. Then, it tried to devise it a little. Crab meat and crab miso were put on the rice of the lunchbox. It made it to the style of a little rice bowl, and the superb taste was tasted. But he couldn't eat all the crabs by himself, so he left only one crab for breakfast and carried the rest to the female host, saying, "It was a feast. Thank you very much." When he said this and handed the bucket to the female host asked with a smile, "Was it delicious?" "Yes. Thank you." When Ryoji answered, female host smiles, "It was good." Saying that, female host went inside with a bucket. Thinking that was a vigorous female host, he watched her walk away and then went back to his room, and he was so tired that he fell asleep quickly that day. When he woke up in the light of the next morning, the time was a little past 7 o'clock, and it was a cold morning with white breath. As soon as he woke up, he turned on the oil fan heater, wrapped a blanket around his body and stayed still, realizing that he had eaten a lot yesterday, but by the morning he was already hungry. When the room warmed up a little, he ate yesterday's crab and fried chicken. After breakfast, he calmed down and thought about his plans for today. In the land of Kushiro, what he had always been interested in was food and wetlands. However, the sea and the mountain are familiar, but the image of the wetlands does not float at all. Because of the unknown, adventure is a man's romantic. He tightened his feelings to achieve his last goal. After that, the action was early, it prepared for departure, it left the room, it thanked the female host, it left the inn, and it got into the car to go to the destination. For the purpose of heading to Kushiro wetlands. He started the car and immediately tried to find the way to the Kushiro marshland, but since this was the first place he had visited, he did not know the way. Kushiro wetlands is famous, so he thought there would be a guide board and started driving. But contrary to his thoughts, he could not find it even if he searched. He got lost, so he asked a nearby passerby for directions to the marshland. A passerby told him, "If you drive on Route 53, there is a sign for the Wildlife Conservation Center at Kushiro Marsh at the intersection, so turn right at that intersection and you will find the nearest observation deck a few kilometers away." He said a thank you and ran the car, but in fact, he learned of the existence of observation deck for the first time. In his mind, he reflected a little on himself for acting without any investigation. And as he drove as he was told by passers-by, he was relieved to see a sign that said 53. After a while, a sign appears indicating the direction of the observatory and the Marsh Wildlife Conservation Center, and he follows the sign and turns right. Then all he had to do is drive straight. He was driving the car, feeling a little elated. Then, on the right, a landscape that looked like a marshland came into view. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary grassland, but as he drove around, thinking it was the edge of the marsh, he saw a facility labeled the Marsh Wildlife Conservation Center. He showed a little interest in the place, but as he passed, the road beyond was a normal one. As he driving a little further, he saw a signboard of the Hakato ruins on the right side of the road. Normally, he was not interested in history at all, but this signboard was something worrisome, and when he looked at it a little, he turned the steering wheel to the right and turned the car to the Hakato ruins. Today's story ends. The next story will be 6 approximately 10 story. The next one will be updated tomorrow. Please look forward to. Please subscribe to my channel.
See you again.